Continuous improvement comes in lots of different flavors and styles. I'm Bella Engelbach, and I'm inviting you to journey with me to the edges of lean. Episode 110, Continuously Improving the Feedback Cycle with Carole Stizza. As lean leaders, we talk about feedback a lot. We know that feedback is important, and if you're like me, you crave it so that we can improve. But let's face it, it's not always effective or helpful, and it's hard to give, and sometimes it's hard to receive. Carole Stizza has researched the topic of feedback, and she says there's a lot we can improve. She joined me at the Edges of Lean to share her insights. Carole Stizza, welcome to the Edges of Lean.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you here today, and I think what we're going to talk about is going to be very pertinent and interesting to those of us who are doing continuous improvement, as we need to interact with people and give and receive feedback, and we need to think about how we might do that, all the different ways to do that. I know you have a lot to share with us regarding that. But first, Carole, can you tell us about Carole?
Sure. So my career started as a military spouse, moving around often. So I got to explore with different forms of work, and now they all fall underneath the umbrella of HR. So I like to joke that I'm a recovering HR professional. One of the things that it provided me with was understanding the difference between military and corporate leadership, what they do differently, what their missions are, and how they kind of go about following them through differently. But as an HR professional, I got to kind of lean in more than not to help mid-level and upper leaders understand how to communicate and connect with their people more. I liked keeping the human in human resource activities that I did. And one of those things involves what we're going to talk about today. We now live in Colorado, which we absolutely adore. And I love hiking and skiing, and I love everything about the mountain area, especially the people who love to be outside too. My kids are diversely spread out. One of them is near you in Philly, and one is in the mountains of Breckenridge here. And then we have family all over the world, like many people who have been remote and getting to move.
So, Carole, what are you doing today?
Today, after I get to spend time with you, I'm reorganizing some priorities for my team. We're looking at the end of the year and getting ready for the beginning of the year, and taking my dog outside. It's beautiful here as well. But really just kind of understanding and reflecting on what we're going to accomplish the rest of the year, which includes us giving and receiving feedback of what's working, what's not. So I'm in it with everybody when we talk about this topic.
One of the things that I experienced in corporate life when I was working for a big corporation was this idea that feedback was a big thing that you did at the end of the year. And we would get a lot of coaching from HR about, make sure that you were not biasing your feedback based on what happened last week, right? To kind of look at the whole year. But as lean professionals, one of the things that we love to talk about is this idea of one-piece flow, continuous flow, and that would include feedback and giving and receiving feedback all the time. And I'm so intrigued about what you're saying about communication styles, because I think that as we communicate as a leader, or even as a team member with another team member, this has to be something about the way that we communicate that impacts our ability to provide that feedback or receive feedback, right? In a continuous flow. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Carole.
Well, let's just first address the elephant in the room. The word feedback triggers people to just go running in a corner, because if it were a compliment, say, I have a compliment for you. Whenever we have feedback, it's kind of masking criticism or something to fix, and it insinuates that you're either broken, need fixing, or you've done something wrong. And it's really not designed to be negative all the time. People say, oh, you need to receive information about how you're doing. But the moment we call it feedback, it feels like we're just opening up a can of criticism. And so I think there's the research on this is in predominantly in the top 5 conversations that people kind of will say is a conflict conversation at work is one about feedback. So when someone comes in, like, I have some feedback for you, your first inclination is like, cool, I'm excited. No, like, oh crap, what have I
did I
done
do
wrong?
now?
Right.
Yeah.
And so come up with another word. Finally, sure. We could call it, hey, let's have a moment of debrief, which is a common term when you're trying to see what went right, see where you're going to grow next, see what challenges showed up, which is probably more in line with the type of information people really want. But they don't go around going, hey, can we have a debrief about the meeting? Because it's normally left for the end of a project. It's given this mantle, just like feedback is given this place and time, as if you have to honor and allocate this big feedback session when you do your performance reviews. So let's just then now bust some myths. We're trying to get away from the annual anything because it doesn't provide the results it used to. It used to be a formality so that you could get a promotion, you could get a pay raise, you could, share in the company profits, which were allocated after bookkeeping. Now, it's not always that way. It's not always attached to money. And when it is, it seems very false or thin or shallow. And so this understanding of how our brains work came out of more research out of Harvard. In one of my last HR roles, I was asked to train people on how to give better feedback more often. So sat down, did the research, and Harvard comes along and says, you know what, teaching people how to give good feedback fails 95% of the time. And you're like, oh,
Wow.
Okay. And they said, so how do we flip this on its, and how do we still go about making feedback not one of the top 5 conversations of conflict at work and make it more appealing and getting you what you want? And after following their chain of research, they said if we could teach people how to ask for the information they wanted, when they needed it, when they could use it, they automatically knew how to give better feedback when the opportunity came along to support somebody's growth. And that was where their research kind of ended. It was like, here's what we know, but it didn't tell you how to go about asking for feedback. It didn't tell what type of conversation was going to be most helpful. So I kind of continued my research along the lines of like, okay, how do we step into short, sweet, professional, respectful, quick conversations and still get the information we need? And that's when I turned to what the brain really wants. And this is where additional research in neuroscience popped up, because it says our brains are continually scanning the universe for 2 things, 24/7, 365. What am I doing right? Where do I fit? Where am I respected? Where's a happy place? And where can I grow next? And social media has captured this science so brilliantly. If you think about it, you scroll for what you like, who you like, you want to check on, and then you see something curious and you go, cool, I want to learn that. When you're tired of learning it, or when you've done learning it, you'll get to meet more people who learn that, and you're back to, ooh, who are the other people? It's kept that going. Now, one thing that social media is now being criticized for is that negativity that scoops in there. And our brains don't have a place that is a home for negativity. It just doesn't know what to do with it, which is why feedback also gets a bad rap. When you get some bad news, your brain is still trying to figure out, well, what did I do right in spite of this? And where does that mean I can grow? And what we're finding is unless you know to ask for those 2 things, you don't know how to unpack the information you're given if it's perceived as negative. So I sat back and go, okay, I need to know what I'm doing right and where to grow next. What if I just asked for that? And so when we started looking at the most interesting and effective ways to make a request, that's where I came up with understanding, okay, let's help people understand how to be clear and efficient. And again, this is where lean people are going to go, I love efficiency. Please tell me. Is if you want to know anything, think about when that context is that you're referencing and be really clear. Like, I'd like to talk about yesterday's meeting, that clarity. Pick a time, give the context of what you're referencing, because that helps the other person hear you with success. And here's why that's important. Because if I say, hey, Beth, oh, wait till you hear this, giving you any moment in time to stop thinking what you're thinking, to join me.
So you're asking, when you're asking for the feedback in the way, you are sort of asking that person to join you in that place, that time, where
Right.
whatever happened, so that you know that they're with you, that they're not
Right.
thinking, like you said, thinking about what they're thinking. Their brains are always chugging along. Right.
Exactly. So if I were to say, hey, Beth, yesterday on the podcast, about halfway through, we were talking about that. You can be even that specific, but just give grace to the conversation you want to have. And so people who are working on projects, who are working with drawings and engineers and all different things, you need to be specific, because your next question is going to have one focus and say, tell me what is going really right now on that. And you need them to be in the same place with you to be able to answer that, or be able to go, I got to think about that. Can I get back with you? Absolutely. Right. It's prefacing. And even if the conversation stops right there and they're going to get back with you, that's fine. You've prefaced it. You've made an ask. What's going really right on that drawing that I know not to screw up when we make the other changes? We forget to ask that question so often when we're in the middle of configuring anything. But let's say the person goes, I know exactly what I love about this, and this. Okay. If I were to do that here, how would you recognize that? Now, that third thing is, can you tell me from your perspective and viewpoint how you're going to recognize what we do next, or how do you experience that? It's
when you say recognize, you're not meaning recognize as in you're going to give me a bonus, or
no.
give me a pizza coupon or something. You're saying how will you see that I am doing this thing? How will you? What would
are you
help you be
looking
aware?
for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you need to now see life through the other person's eyes. So if I were to ask, let's say if I go back in time to a boss and say, hey, we just got done doing this big event. What's one thing that you really, really are proud of in that event? Right? I can ask that. And he goes, oh my God. Well, can you share with me how you experienced that from your position, from your perspective? That's what we're going after. How do you see life when we're talking about this thing? And what happens there in that moment is you're asking the person to share with you their perspective, which forms a connection that you really care and want to know how what you're talking about affects them. And it's a really interesting nuance to continuing a lot of questions. We're not used to that. We're used to, let's say you're used to setting the context and asking a question. You get the answer, you leave. And I go, but you're missing the best part. You need to stop and say, share with me how you see things in regards to this. Could be my performance, could be the team's performance, could be what's going on. So it's context, ask for one thing, ask from their perspective. And then you can actually take it a little bit further, like, what would you like to see next? what's the first step into getting this right for you? How will you recognize this the next time we're in the team meeting? You ask what and how questions, because that moves the conversation along to a richer, deeper place.
One of the things that is kind of tripping my brain right now, Carol, is a conversation that we have a lot in the lean world, which is around metrics. So we often get asked, or teams often get asked, well, what are the metrics that you're going to use on this project? And what executives often want is the outcome metric, right? I want to know that we're going to sell X more units, or I want to know that we're going to save X amount of money, right? But they don't have any insight into sort of the in-process metrics, the metrics that would tell you we are on the path to getting the outcome that you're looking for, right? And if they don't have that and we're unable to provide those to them, then we get micromanagement, where the executive will come in and say, I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Let's pull up the carrots and see how they're growing, right? Which can be very disruptive to an individual or a team. But I think if I understand correctly what you're saying, in these little small feedback conversations, what you're really asking them is, how do you perceive that in-process metric, the way that we are achieving the outcome that we're all looking for, but asking for it in their language. And I think that's really powerful, because when we as lean people, continuous improvement people, go in and we start talking about metrics, sometimes it's like way over the head. It doesn't make sense to the person that we're speaking with. But you're talking about this, as you're saying, both with individuals and with a team. I think that's really helpful.
Play that. Let's play that on both sides of the mirror. So you get to talk to an executive, and you can say, let's talk about the outcomes, what we're here to do, what you want to see. Set the context. What is the main goal in this project, and how will it? And you've got the context. What is the main goal in this project? You can start there, or you can get more specific. How will you recognize that we're on the right path? Tell me, walk me through what you see, what you need to see.
To know that we're on the right path, yeah.
And then the what and how question is like, what's the first thing you want to see us do next for you? How do you want us to present this to you the next meeting, right? Those what and how questions then give you continuous more information. So that's when you ask. Now, let's say you need to go in and provide. Say, hey, I'm here to provide an update on this. You said the one thing you want to do is this. This is great. Here's what we're doing from our side to get there. So you're giving your perspective. And here's what we're planning to deliver next. Here's how you will receive it. Here's how we're hoping you recognize it, right? So you can ask in the same framework that you offer. But
so
and I've tried
offering, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've tried to keep it on less than a hand, because sometimes I need little triggers like context. And it doesn't have to be in this order. I call it a framework. You can say, hey, what is the main goal of this one project? You can flip the context around somewhere in there, but you've got to set the other person up for success to know specifically what you're talking about. We've all gone into a room and like, hey, nice to see you. Great meeting yesterday. What'd you like best? And they're going to go, the refreshments, when you really wanted to know what'd you like best about the data, and you forgot to ask that, right? So
right, for those of you who are listening rather than watching, Carol's actually holding up her hand and counting off on her fingers these factors. So don't be afraid to use your fingers. But it's exactly, I have that experience every time I ask my grandchildren, how was school today? And they say, fine. And then I say, well, tell me specifically something that was good. And they go, oh, recess was great.
So people will generalize.
Yeah.
Their answers because they like to play it safe. And they don't know what you want to hear, and they don't want to say something that's going to trigger an unexpected reaction. So when it comes to grandchildren are great to practice this on, especially kids and teenagers. You can say, hey, I see you're home from school today. What was the funniest thing that happened to you? Be specific with your ask. What was the one thing that made you laugh out loud today? What was your favorite food at lunchtime? When you were at recess, what was the funniest thing you saw somebody do that you want to do too? Get specific in your asks so that you can actually get specific into an engaging conversation that because when you get specific, when you provide that context, you're giving them a safe space. They know where to put the information. So we have to set up our coworkers, our peers, our supervisors in the same way. I'd like to talk about yesterday's meeting. Specifically, I'd like to talk about the data. What part of that data helps you the most? Or what part of that data was just so wrong for you that we need to look at it together, right? Provide the context and the questions focus provides the safe space for the conversation to go rich and deep quickly. And I think that's important when you're working in lean and efficient and process improvement environments all the time. We forget how to set up the safe space for a quick, good conversation. And this has propelled me to kind of be the preacher on the stone, like, don't forget to set up the conversation correctly and get focused on your question.
That's really interesting, Carole, because we talk a lot about the leaders creating a safe space. And what you're talking about is the team or the team member creating a safe space for the leader. And I think we sometimes forget that leaders are human too, right? Right. And leaders may have as much trepidation about perhaps giving feedback and being concerned, about a reaction or not being sure whether the feedback will have the result that they want. And I love what you're saying. Let's recognize that everyone here is a human being who needs that respect and benefits from clarity.
And here's a fun fact to kind of keep under everybody's bonnet is when the additional research on leadership, and this could be self-leadership, your own, because so many of us work remote, you have to go back to self-leadership as well as your leadership. One of the key behaviors that quadruples the results of your information and ability to act is asking for information that helps you move forward, which is asking for feedback, helpful information. And I'll get more specific. There are 30 behaviors that has been found to be key leadership behaviors that really accelerate team engagement, results, high performance. And when they polled these 25,000 different leaders, asking how their performance affected everybody else's performance, asking for that feedback was the last behavior they would implement because we've got such outdated mythological thinking about feedback. And they're so repelled by it going south that they don't step into making it positive. But this one behavior, asking for feedback on performance, when put into use, literally times their efficiency, their ability to achieve the results they want faster, and to do better and better work with their teams. So if we take that idea, it's okay for anybody at any level to go to anyone they work with, anybody who receives their work, anybody who's asking for their work, and ask, hey, how is my performance affecting your performance? Give me some insights. I'd like to understand more about my job and how my performance affects yours. So I'd like to know specifically, how does my performance or the things I give you, the things I provide you, affect what you do? Can you share with me a day in your life when so you can give me an example, right? So that type of conversation can be quick. It can be done in passing. It can, hey, you got 3 minutes. It can go into a really good, rich conversation.
And that is, again, it's kind of flipping around what we expect from the feedback cycle, right? Because we might sometimes in sort of the annual feedback or the 6-month feedback loop, we might have expected a leader to say to us, or us as a leader to say to somebody, when you do this thing, it really makes a big difference because, or when you do this thing, it's really, it's harmful because, and we go on for another, we've been doing that for 6 months, right? Or we might not hear it at all because the feedback has been about, did you achieve your personal goals? And you don't see how those goals have connected to other people. But that is such a wonderful question for connecting people's work to the work of the leader and the work of the organization, right? That's and people look for that connection, don't they, Carole? People want to know that what they are doing actually is helping to move things forward so they can be part of something larger than themselves. And a lot of people struggle because they don't understand how their work impacts.
Well, they like to sit back in ambiguity and fret and worry. And this is why anxiety is becoming an increase in the workplace, especially in the hybrid situations we're in. When you're left isolated in your own home with your own computer and you don't feel as if you have permission or understand how to ask, hey, how am I doing? Then you will self-degrade your performance because we have a tendency to be, well, how can I do it better? How can we fret. When if you just go, hey, do you got a couple, you can do it in a chat. Hey, on after this meeting, you got a couple minutes? I just got a question for you. Could be someone associated with your work that you're reporting to, or that they're giving work to you. Hey, when you get this work to me by the deadline, oh, that's so great, because then I have time to do this. But when you come in a day late, then I'm left short. How do we correct this? How do I help you meet that deadline? Because this is how it's affecting me. You can have these type of conversations if you kind of understand this framework. Make sure it's context specific. You keep it focused on one thing, not, oh, well, when you do this and then one thing at a time, because our brains only have the capacity to unpack and honor one thing well. And the moment it goes to multiples, you average out the value of everything offered and you miss that opportunity to know what's the most significant thing you need to talk about. So when you keep it to one thing, you'll pick the most significant thing you need to talk about, or you'll pick something that's safer to test the waters of the conversation so that you know exactly how to go after the bigger, deeper thing. So if we take these soft, easy, short conversations, context, one thing of focus to ask or offer, let me see it through your eyes, or I'll offer you through my eyes, and what and how questions to kind of tie it in a bow of what's going to happen next, how will I need to see that next, whatever that is. It is a framework that allows people to kind of efficiently go after or offer things that will connect them with greater trust, predictability, and conversations as they need to work and be successful together. Nobody gets up any one morning going, I just cannot wait to suck today. I'm going to be so bad, so bad, it's going to be monumental. I'm going to get an award. No. Everybody gets up going, today is going to be better than yesterday. We'll figure it out. And so we need to take these conversations and go after the information we want. And if you hate the word feedback, don't call it that. I want insights. I want to know what's going well. I want to know how to grow next. And there's 2 words I would love for people to stop saying because they have a tendency to be used in the wrong way. I would love for people to stop using the word improve and replace it with growth. So here's how we're going to improve means something got broken. Here's our growth opportunity. Very different conversation, right? It's very different energy. We can move forward instead of ruminate. The other word is but. Yes, but. Great, but.
That's the feedback sandwich, right?
I hate it. And I said, if that sentence, a whole sentence with and, then you need to not say the first part and go after the second part you're going to say.
Just say it. Just say it.
Just say it.
Right.
And say, here's how it makes me feel. Here's what's going on. Don't say, hey, great day, but sucks. Hey, we're all trying to make this good today. Problem here, we have a growth opportunity here. I mean, and some people are going to get tired of hearing the growth idea because we've improved is such an ingrained idea. We're always trying to get better. But really, go back to the brain. Our brain wants to know what we're doing right so we can keep it and honor it. We don't throw it out with a bathwater so that we know where to grow next. That's it. Our brain wants what to keep, where to grow. What am I doing right? Where do I grow next? It's just how our brains are fed. So if we include that conversation and our intention to gain information for those two things, you'll see a more engaged workforce and team.
I think it's so interesting because we're in continuous improvement. I don't know that we're going to throw the word improvement
You
away,
won't.
but
You won't.
I love the idea of for what the work we do is that we can improve process, we can improve experiences for people, but we're really here to grow people. And though people who are really deeply into the lean philosophy know that it's all about helping people achieve their full potential to
Right.
really to learn as much as they can and be as strong as they can and as skilled as they can be. So it's not about improving, it is about growth. So
Right.
I'm
And
really going
language
to make
is
sure.
what it is. Language is
Yeah.
what it is. But be intentional about how you're using the language you're using for which part. If your whole thing is to improve the end result, the experience, so that they can, then you're growing in your efficiency, you're growing in the processes, you're growing in how people use them better. And so, again, both words work. We just have a tendency to replace improve for growth when we really mean growth. And I said, if you want somebody to grow, say grow. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
improve the end result, that's fine. To get
Mm-hmm.
there, they're going to have to grow in how they use everything you're offering. And I think it's interesting when you choose to use the word grow, you'll see the energy difference when people start to buy into, oh, I get to grow in this. Not I have to improve the way I use it, means I haven't been using it right. There's an undertone that people are like, change, crap. But if you say grow, they're going to go, oh, change you go after without calling it change. And it's just, again, language find is more important than we give it credit for. And when it's used or respected and used to create great space for good conversations, it works.
And that makes so much sense to me. I mean, certainly when I think about the word improve, when it's directed to a person, it immediately takes me to, I don't know, seventh grade and being told I needed to improve in math. And what did that mean? I needed to do more homework, or I needed to, pay better attention in class or something. And it was about some deficiency in myself. So I think that is kind of hardwired in how we understand that particular word. Carole, if you don't mind for a minute, I would just like to talk a little bit about bias in feedback, and I think this very specific point, which is I think Marcus Buckingham talks about this, is that when we are giving feedback and we're saying, talking about, let's say, potential growth areas, that for many of us, our benchmark is ourselves. That is, you are not like me, so I would like you to change to be more like me. And I was wondering if you have seen that as you're working with people on feedback, and how you help people address that.
Well, we all think that belonging means more conformity. And I always take people back to, if you look at a superhero team, there's no redundancy. Nobody thinks like anyone else on that team, but they learn how to value what they're offering. We all think differently. Cloning you is not going to help us at all. We need diversity of thought in every team on every project. So yes, our bias is to see through our eyes and interpret through our brain without taking the time to explore how they think. So the interesting thing about taking feedback and turning it upside down and letting people ask for what they need, and then asking that question, share with me how you see this, we start to see and hear, how the other person thinks, and we automatically start to value how they think. So asking for feedback negates a bias. So when you give feedback, if it's only one directional, it will always have bias.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, you build in perspective gaining, hey, I've got some feedback. Let's say we go an old-fashioned conversation. I got some feedback for you on last week's project, right? Here's the one thing I'd like to see you develop more in. Instead of continuing on with, direct and command speaking, it's a one-way conversation. I'm going to tell you, so you leave the room and you've got everything. I think you hear me. No, that next part, that third part is like, when I say that, please share with me what you're thinking. Walk me through, when I say I need you to grow here, what that means to you. Listen. A good conversation is a give and take. When they say leaders or good teammates are really good listeners, it's not like they're eavesdropping. They have to ask good questions to listen to good information. So when you give feedback, even if it's based on the old adage of improvement, you've got to take that third step and say, share with me what you're thinking when I say that I would like to see you grow here. If their thinking is like, well, apparently I've done everything wrong, well, that's too extreme. Pull them back in, like, no. Let's make sure you hear what you're doing right. Here's why I need you to grow here. Here's my goal in having you grow here, is because you're capable of growth here. I don't know if you know you're capable of growth here, but you're not going to know exactly how to give feedback that's going to be acted upon until you hear how the other person is thinking from both sides of the coin. And so to avoid the bias, avoid that tunnel vision of, this is how I see it, so this must be how you hear it.
Yep.
This is never how it happens. And say, when I said that, what did you really hear me say? And it'll be a much better conversation.
And then invites the person to ask the question, your kind of core question, which is how will you recognize that? So you need, I don't know, something simple like say I'd like to get my my daily update by 4 p.m. every day, right? Yeah.
Right.
Make sure you ping that to me. Well, if somebody says, well, what I'm hearing you say is that I'm not fast enough on summarizing the daily update for you, and then you but that also gives them the opportunity to say, well, how exactly would that be helpful to you? What would be the best way for me to provide that information to you? Because it's probably not just about, is it timely at 4 o'clock? Or, I'm just making this scenario up.
Well, but
is it
to your
containing
point,
the information that you need, right? And now it's a two-way conversation.
right, because let's pick your instance of, I need to have this by 4 every day, and then the person who's hearing, well, I would love to provide that by 4 every day, but I don't get the information I need to interpret it until 3:45 or 3:30. There's a chain, right? So now we can unpack, there's a chain of disconnect that doesn't fall to just one person and set them up for failure. How do we set everybody up for success? I'd like to do that. I understand if I don't get the information until 3:30, either how can I make this information transition quicker, more efficient, or were you thinking I got this information at 2?
Yeah.
Right. So it's unpacking, not blaming. Well, and though you're not blaming, well, so-and-so doesn't it. So no, were you thinking I got this information earlier and I was sitting on it? Because I'm not. I'm working my butt off, but I don't get it until late. So and they go, oh, well, if you're not getting it until 3:45, then if I get it by 4:30, it's good. Right. So now you've got a better conversation. And I think this is what makes gaining the right information so rich, is how do you step into a conversation that's going to go in a positive momentum, action-oriented way, not just a blaming way. And feedback's gotten a really bad rap because people have used feedback as a masking of criticism and command. I want you to do this, do it only this way, and leave my office, right? that's not feedback. That's telling or criticizing. I've got some feedback for you. Well, if it weren't used to mass criticism, we like it more. So we're
Right.
trying to really flip the script here and say, go ask for what you want when you can use it, and understand how to step into really cool conversations with people so that you set them up for success with context. You keep it really streamlined with one thing as the focus.
One
You
thing, right. Single
one
piece
thing,
flow, we would say in lean.
right?
Let's do it.
Perfect. Single piece flow, perfect. Get their perspective. When I say that, what are you thinking? How do you see it? How do you see this happening? What or how? What needs to happen next? How do you want us to proceed? Whatever that is. And we could go on for hours talking about all these, why I came up with this little framework. But if you can kind of just keep it in this safe kind of framework, you can move on with the day, come back on something else. And the quicker you start to experiment with these single focus, quick conversations, context, focus, get their perspective, what and how, next steps, you'll find communication gets tighter, safer, more focused. Everything becomes more efficient and leaner, and you're getting things done without people waiting, being ambiguous, thinking it's someone else's fault. I mean, we have the power to lean in and go after information we need. We just haven't been told we can do it or told how to do it. And I think that's the interesting thing, is when people come out of college, they're so used to being given permission to do something. And then when the permission is not given, they're assuming they can't. And they go, well, let's just break that mold for you.
Yeah. And they're used to coming out of whatever their academic experience is. It's all about being evaluated and graded and did you earn your A today? Work's not like that. It's not about giving out A's. It's
Yeah,
about
we do not educate people to be successful in a work environment at all. They spend decades in a direct and command grading system, and then they come into work and don't know why they don't know how to ask for, did I get an A today? Am I on the right track? We don't have a syllabus. And much as we've got people trying to teach critical thinking in college, they're still pleasing an instructor.
mm-hmm.
And that's the closest they get to a boss, but they don't know how to
First,
talk like a coworker to a boss.
right. First day of class, you get the list of, the syllabus. This is what you do. This is when the tests are. These are when the assignments are due. Everything, it's not like being an environment where there's so much change all the time. You're working with different people. You're in a process where things arrive not when you expect them. Yeah. It's so different.
It
Yeah.
is.
Carol, I know people are going to want to learn more about this. Can you tell us where we could find out more and how to get in contact with you?
Sure. Well, I actually couldn't find as much research as I wanted on this, so I wrote a book called The Ask Framework on Amazon. But I have a website that I love to engage with people on, and on LinkedIn. So please, first choice, go to LinkedIn. It's Carole with an E, Stizza, that looks like pizza, but it's not. So please go look and connect on LinkedIn. I offer a lot of content there. My website is relevant-insight.com, mainly because I believe,
relevantinsight.com.
yep,
Okay.
I believe everybody is trying to be relevant in everything they do and with those they care about. And I look forward to it. I've got newsletters. People can sign up for that on my website and other blogs and content. But this is a really interesting behavior that if we could put more asking in these conversations in work, people would really get a lot more out of their day.
And it's not just for work, actually. It's
True.
for
It's
anything,
not.
right? Anything you could use it at home. You can use it in volunteer work. There's lots of places where this could be used. Hey, Carol, what would be your one piece of advice for a young person starting out?
I give you permission to go into work and get curious about how what you do affects everybody else's success, and ask those questions. just get to know people through that question, and you will learn more than you could ever learn on a day of onboarding. Just assume that's part of your onboarding initiative. I give you permission to go learn and have fun doing it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Great advice. Yeah. Carole Stizza, thank you so much for traveling with me to the edges of lean.
I love it. This is having worked with engineers and many people in your industry. I love what you do, and I love the people in it.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
You got it.
This is Bella Engelbach, and I'd like to thank Carole Stizza for being my guest at the Edges of Lean. What did you learn from this conversation? What ideas did it spark? We would love to hear from you. You could find Carole at relevant-insight.com or on LinkedIn, and you can check out a complimentary chapter of her upcoming book right there on her website. Find me on LinkedIn or at leanforhumans.com, or comment wherever you watch or listen. And check out my friends in the Lean Communicators community at leancommunicators.com, where you'll find lots of great new content every week. The Edges of Lean is written and produced by Bella Engelbach with support from Podcast Inc. This is a Lean for Humans production.